So, this is the Battle of Fehrbellin. It's actually in the Scanian War. It's the first of the scenarios from the war in nothing, yeah, nothing gained but glory, which is the fifth game of the Musket and Pike series. So, a little bit about the Scanian War, not a hell of a lot. I don't know a lot about it. Like a number of engagements that occurred after Gustavus's victories in the 30 Years' War, and the victories that Sweden carried forward after that, the Swedish Empire in the Baltic was really an abomination to all her neighbors. First of all, many of them lost territory in order for this patched together set of ports and little hunks of land to support them in order to form that. So pretty much all of Sweden's neighbors were very much opposed to her, and Sweden sought out some sort of way to maintain a very, very large army, large enough to face these neighbors and garrison the spread out hunks of land. And, well, France was their patron. And basically France would bribe them to go to war. And that's what happened in the Scanian War, is Brandenburg entered a war against France involving the Dutch, and the Swedes were bought to go attack Brandenburg. And this battle, which is a circumstance where the Swedish army was divided into two, and this is half of it being hit by the Prussian army. The fact that this battle was a victory for the Prussians, that the Swedes could be defeated, became sort of a morale cause. And Denmark and a number of other countries, if you can call them countries, but the small states in Germany, rose up and were willing to take on Sweden and try to grab back what they had lost, or just take advantage of the situation. The important one being Denmark, of course, but Brandenburg is, had a real axe to grind as well, and was a fairly potent power. All right, so what is our situation here? Well, the Swedes are trying to get out, but there's a bridge back this way that needs to be rebuilt. And the engineers are building that. And this force is pretty much being used as a rear guard. Well, I mean, it is their force. Now, it's set up like most forces in the era. Very powerful. Actually, it's a little heavier on the infantry than I'm used to. Very, very powerful infantry center with some some cav wings to the sides. It's a double line that gives a lot more resilience, but can cause some problems because there's no gaps in it for retreats. We've seen that in some of the battles from with God and Victorious Arms. It's got a little bit of artillery, 2 light pieces on the flank. The rest of his artillery has been pushed back. Now the commander here is an interesting fellow. One of them wrangles. There's a lot of wrangles around in the Swedish military history. This particular one has his position through nepotism, essentially. And he's not even the army commander. He's got a wing. In fact, there is no army commander. All the commanders are pretty poor valued zeros across the board. Which means they're not going to do much. Now looking at their opposition, this is kind of an interesting thing. One thing about the map that I had to make clear: these swamps are absolutely impassable, and these, I believe, block line of sight. This one does not. Maybe I have that mistaken and turned around. Yeah, no, I have it right. Okay. So what are they facing? Well, they're facing a large cavalry army. Hesse Homburg is leading this tremendous wing of all cav, and we have the Great Elector, Frederick Wilhelm, and I don't know how that's gonna fare. In the combat chart, cuirassiers do not do terribly well against heavy infantry. All this infantry has pikes. Granted, they're heavily outnumbered in terms of total cav, but it doesn't look to me like there's enough force in this cav wing to be able to take out the Swedish army. Granted, the terrain's really good. It's pretty much flat across here, but it's a choke point, and the Swedish army is anchored on both flanks. The one side in their favor that I see for the Prussians is Derflinger. Now, he's got a couple of cav, he's got an open order back here. He's got some light infantry stacked under these artillery. These are higher than normal hills. Everywhere else we've got gentle slopes. Here they're considered steep slopes. So he can actually view over and bombard into the Swedish line from there. That's going to be a problem. But I'm not terribly convinced that the Swedes can't fall back and get out of the painful range of this artillery fire. This village here is not really a very powerful terrain feature. Villages normally are fairly strong defensive positions, better than the hedgerows that we saw in the last one, for example. But this is counted as a garden. And I don't know. I don't have values for that kicking around right away. Yeah, I don't have values for a garden kicking around, but I can't really imagine that sounds. Oh, here we go. Thicket, vineyard, or garden. Definitely not a good place to be. There's actually a penalty to trying to defend it for close combat, and otherwise it's just a movement hazard. But on the other hand, it's probably not some place that the attacker wants to try walking through if they can avoid it. So I wouldn't see too much harm to dropping the line back to here and getting out of the range of those guns. Scenario starts off with a pre-fire. The Germans are allowed to start shooting up the current position of the Swedes, and then we roll into that first turn. It's a short scenario because the Swedes, as soon as they have that bridge built, are going to disengage. Alright, I guess we can get started. Well, any thoughts of pulling that Swedish line back before the Brandenburgers hit is obviously not going to happen. All the Prussians sat on charge order at the big cav unit, so since all the Swedes are in receive charge, they don't really get a chance to do anything. I want to catch this moment. This is before the full charge hits. The artillery pre-barrage shot up and disrupted. I don't know about this one. Yeah. a couple, actually, I think they got 3 formation hits total. They disrupted 3 units. The first Brandenburg unit to come into range of the Swedes ended up getting charged and chased off the map. But then we saw a Swedish unit charge forward to try to break up momentum on this guy. And he succeeded in doing that, but he got eliminated in the act. Now we've got momentum charges crashing against Cav here and against the heavy infantry. The heavy infantry getting first fire, especially on this end guy, convinced Brandenburg not to try to pursue deeper into the line at this point. They want to try to turn the flank. They want to try to break up this Cav so that they can get through and hit the other flank as well. But yeah, pretty much classic Cav hitting a line. Where it was disrupted, they got in pretty easy. Where the line's in good order and it's solidly anchored with a unit, even if it's a disrupted unit on its edge, not so pleasant. I'm going to roll up the attacks. The Prussians are attacking everywhere where they are connected. After the Prussians broke through here, the Swedes countercharged. And we've got a couple casualties on both sides. And of course the fleeing unit. We've got leaders on both sides, both Wrangel and Hess Hamburg. Hess Hamburg was leading the charge, and he got taken off. His unit disappeared under him. So actually, units disappearing is how both got knocked out. So they have a chance of coming back, but that stops the Prussian assault. It would have had a third action, which might have been able to break through here. Maybe even worse, the Swedish line held here. Even this guy who was definitely, there was a +3 attack on him, which is usually pretty good, but got sent to the hills. The guy who was attacking the strong point, only 1 strength point left, got sent running hard. Doesn't look good for that initial assault. And that's the end of the first turn. Still got a few counters to flip, I can do that later. Overall, the charge was mildly successful. I don't think it did anything too exciting. The biggest thing was the loss of leaders. Now, losing Wrangel is no great loss, but losing Hess Hamburg has gotta hurt the Brandenburgs. Losing a -2 leader. In both cases, they were knocked into knocked off the map, and they're not coming back, so they count as casualties, I guess. Down here, Derflinger, his heaviest artillery, he's limbering up, and he's going to try to put it someplace where it might do some good. Chances are he's not going to get it anywhere within the length of this scenario. It's really hard to get artillery placed in this kind of situation, especially given that the Swedes are willing to give ground. They just don't want to lose. They don't want their formation totally destroyed, is what it comes down to. So like we see here, there's no good terrain, so they're just kind of refusing a flank. Now that they're actually moving up to create that, and that's how they got rid of at least one of the Cav units, was doing that. Derflinger's Cav is making it out in open order and preparing itself to continue hitting the flank down here, while the main Cav can make an attack trying to hit the central line area. But that heavy infantry is hard to dislodge. Alright, I'm going to wrap this one and send it up to you. But this is the beginning of Fehrbellin.